Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, I have on two special guests. I have on Mr. Bear,
Hello there.
and I have the lovely and wonderful Purple Rhymes with Orange.
Hello.
And in the chat today, I see that Ronald Harris was here 11 hours ago. Ronald has been waiting a very long time for this show. Ron, I hope we are we hold up to that kind of waiting time. And Skits Crasher has been here almost as long. He's been here since about 11 o'clock this morning. And we also have Lurking the Crabby Hermit. And in the chat active, we have Brainbug and Ricardo Oliveira. I imagine Ricardo is probably going to need to go to bed soon because I understand that he's somewhere across the pond where it's really late. And we also have Chris Para. There we go. Dog is here and Nevermore. Thank you all for joining me. Today, I kind of wanted to continue a little bit along the lines that we started last week with Jenny Morgan and student Dr. Ben and Kitty talking about some of the really horrific anti-LGBTQ legislation and the misogynistic legislation that is being proposed and people are trying to shove down our throats here in the United States. I want to talk a little bit about where that is coming from. And Mr. Bear is here to let us know what is going on down under if they're seeing kind of the same thing. And I'm going to let Purple start out because Purple says we have some good news out of Wisconsin. So take it away, Purple.
Yeah, I really don't have a lot of details on it, but that Wisconsin killed a transgender bill. Yeah, that was mostly a lot of the nonsense about the transgender bathrooms and such.
Okay. So it was more of a nuisance bill than anything that was going to be truly horrific. And when I say that, what I mean is that here in Alabama, in Idaho, they're trying to ban medical care for transgender children.
Yeah, I wish Jenny Morgan was here. She actually had more information on that one. But also, Idaho has killed the bill, got killed by the Republican conference just because the bill got national exposure and they were getting such an outcry about it. And that was a bill that would have restricted parents getting any type of gender affirmation, services for a child.
One thing that happened here in Alabama last year, Shay Shelnut, one of our state senators, proposed a bill that was laughably stupid because one of the things that it attempted to do was to ban all counseling for transgender children. And it did not pass, fortunately. And I see that he has resubmitted his bill this year, but at least I will say that at least he took out that portion of the bill. So at least he realized that that was never going to fly.
Run that past me again. He wanted to ban counseling for trans people.
For transgender children, yeah. Basically what the bill said was that no medical care would be provided for transgender children. They specifically listed surgical care, puberty blockers, drug therapies, and counseling. Counseling was on the list too.
Right.
Go ahead.
The bill they just killed in Idaho also had said about no therapy for children.
I mean, despite what you think about everything else you listed there, which I have personally no problem with, but despite what you've listed there, the single thing with in relation to counseling is that the question there is, I suppose, can you have bad counseling? Yes, you can. But overall counseling is overall a positive thing, right? In the majority. So it's kind of like I don't really understand that part of it. You can have really strong views about puberty blockers for sure. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with it, but I get that people would have strong opinions about that. But counseling, really?
I've run into people that support that, and their claim is that trans people are delusional, and so if you allow them counseling, you're just feeding into their delusions instead of trying to encourage them to get over it.
Oh, that's the angle they're coming from. Okay.
Yes, that's the angle they're coming from.
So counseling will support the delusion and
Right.
perhaps fuel the delusion. I don't see how, but anyway, yeah. Okay. Right. So I really have to rearrange the cells in my brain to see where some people come from, and it really takes a lot of energy and pain. And it's like,
Yes, it does.
oh, that's where they're coming from. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I actually, and I brought this up to Jenny Morgan because this was something that to me just came completely out of left field and took me completely by surprise. Was their claims that anyone who supports transgender therapy is homophobic because transgender people are really homosexuals, and if you allow them to transition, you are doing conversion therapy to force them to not be homosexual.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Oh boy.
it sounds like they were just trying to turn the LGBT community against transgender people.
Exactly. That's exactly what they were trying to do. They're trying to divide the community.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Bear, what are things like down under? Is there the same kind of push from conservatives to try to legislate some of these things?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Our government tried to introduce a religious discrimination bill back in 2019. Unfortunately, there was something called a major bushfire event at that time, destroying about 500 million native species. So our Prime Minister had to put that aside for a little while. This is our evangelical Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, who believes God talked to him through a painting of an eagle. He attends Hillsong. He displays quite sociopathic tendencies. But anyway, in this religious discrimination bill, very recently there were protections in there for gay students in school, that gay students could not be expelled from church schools and Christian schools. However, there was nothing there to protect trans students, and they admitted as such very recently. Now, it took 5 members of their party to cross the floor to vote against this. And now it has been shelved indefinitely, but there was nothing in there to protect trans students. So once again, we've got this minority being vilified, feeling left out with no protection. So this is the thing. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has firmly wedged himself on a blade because he's got the Australian Christian lobby headed up by Martin Iles, a really pasty-faced Christian schoolboy type. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, but that's pretty much what he is.
You're fine. This is the place to say those kinds of things.
Well, he's a pasty-faced Christian schoolboy, and he basically is trying to force the Prime Minister's hand, and very conservative Christian lobby groups trying to force his hand as well. So he's on a knife edge. He wants to put in this protections against protections for these students, but ultimately, what happens now is you could be a gay student, not be expelled. You could learn to be a teacher. You could get a job at a church school and then be fired. That's essentially sort of the situation they've set up, which is just inherently illogical and nonsensical. So yeah, there's been a lot of trans kids being outspoken on mainstream media, social media, becoming outspoken against this religious discrimination bill. Basically, this bill came into being as some sort of revenge against the same-sex acts when same-sex marriage became legal in 2017. in our country. Better late than never, I guess. So that was the government's response to that legalization, is to introduce this bill, which unfortunately is being picked apart whenever it's presented in Parliament. And so it should be. It's quite nonsense.
If I could jump in for a moment, I just wanted to address something Dog said in the side chat there.
I intentionally left that one go because I wanted to give that some specific attention. Go ahead, Purple. Go for it.
Yeah. I think it would be very difficult finding any place that you could get any type of transgender medical care without having seen a therapist. In some areas, it's actually required by law, but even if it's not, I doubt that any reputable doctor would do it without having somebody talk to a therapist first.
And that is exactly why they are trying to ban transgender counseling. Because if you can't see a counselor, you can't go to the doctor.
Yeah, you can't go any further.
Right. And so by banning the counseling, you're essentially banning the entire pathway to any kind of transition. One of the more egregious aspects of that bill, which is still in the bill, which is under consideration here in Alabama, is a requirement that schools out trans children. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that I think the response to that is that the school should send an email to every parent every day saying your child may or may not have done something to indicate that they may or may not have ideas of being different than their gender or sex.
Well, good in theory, but I can see a lot of reactionary parents running away with that. You know, and I believe Alabama's also, you know, rather pushing for the conversion therapy. So that's really.
Are they? I have not seen that. I would have to look for that.
Okay, I'm not sure if I've got.
Well, no, it could very well be, because I tend to be a little late to the party. I tend to be more reactionary than I am, you know, ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I'm in a similar place as well.
But yeah, I'm sure their whole point that the parents have to be informed is so that the parents could step in and take action and probably get them to a counselor that's going to try and convince them that's not really who they are.
Yeah, we have an organization here called Binary. It's run by Kiralee Smith. And she's very much of the opinion. She often shares the same story on her Twitter feed, and that is that there was a certain person in the UK who regretted their transition.
Right. Katie Bell.
So it could, the name rings a bell, possibly. Yeah. And she always references this one person to fuel the narrative. And
Katie Bell eventually lost that case, though.
I don't know the details of it. It could be that person, but it could be someone else. So, yeah,
that is the most famous case. Is the Katie Bell case in England?
It probably is a reason why it rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard for them to find examples because the actual deconversion of people who have gone transgender and then reverted back. The last statistic I heard was 0.4%. You know, so like less than a half of 1%.
Right.
And in most of those cases, when they've interviewed the people, even that was because of pressure from society or their family.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Actually, the pasty-faced fellow I mentioned before, Martin Isles, he talks to a person who regrets their transition as well. I'll have to have a quick look for you and see if I can find it.
Okay.
But that person comes across as really quite unsure about a lot of things, not just that issue.
Nevermore says that, you know, that would get a lot of kids beaten, unfortunately, not a solution. And you're not only right, you're understating the case, because not only will that get kids beaten, but that will also get kids into a position where they're going to be suicidal. And because the suicide rate among transgender children isn't it close to 50%, Purple?
Jenny Morgan had told me it was like 40% among transgender teenagers.
But I do know that studies show that when transgender children are supported in affirming the gender that they identify with, the suicidality is at the same level as the rest of society. It drops completely to being equal to anyone who's not transgender. And so that alone should tell you that trans kids need to be supported.
Yeah.
It's not just a matter of, this feels good. It's a matter of life and death for them.
Yeah, exactly. But the conservative Christian groups label conversion. So, for instance, in Victoria, here in Australia, they banned conversion therapy, and you have the conservatives calling that evil. The fact they're banning this conversion therapy, it's such an inversion of logic, and how they sort of frame this as conversion therapy being an absolute positive. When you've got so many cases of people saying no, it was an absolute waste of time and really quite horrible experience to go through.
Mm-hmm. Ricardo Oliveira here has a link to the news article, and I said Katie, it's Kiera Bell, where that case got overturned.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Okay.
I'm not sure if that's Nidimos or Nidimos, but my dad is trans and my school found out. I got verbally assaulted and was suicidal, not even for my own gender. That's interesting. Yeah. And, the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida is going to affect people that are in that situation. You say, I have two moms. You say, I have a trans parent. Those kids are open to being picked on and bullied, and the staff can't do anything about it because of the prohibitions against it.
Well, and I hear a lot of people say things like, if you don't like these laws, move. But the reality is that moving is expensive. I would not have been able to afford to move if people in the community hadn't donated about $2,000 to help us get out of Michigan.
Yeah. It's not as, but why should you have to move is really the question, right? I mean, why should you have to? The laws, why are the laws there in the first place?
Well, the law is clearly to persecute people, and that's not how our country is supposed to work.
And that is exactly where I wanted to get to. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why is a minority of voters trying to foist these views onto most of us when most of us do not want this kind of legislation? I really think that religion is behind the whole thing. I think these are religious views, and that the only reason we don't hear it as religious views is because the politicians know that if they say, hey, God doesn't want your child to be trans, that they're not going to get anything passed that way because that's not permitted. So they have to find other terms to couch it in. And so they come up with these crazy ideas, which, the primary one that they express is that we've got to ban health care for trans children because otherwise they're going to be going through surgery. Well, nobody's doing surgery on children to change their gender. And so we don't need legislation for that any more than we need legislation against anything else that would be deadly, but nobody's doing.
Yep.
The puberty blockers are just supposed to be to, prevent puberty from going through and giving them time to think it through until they're old enough to make an adult decision.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of levels to it as well. I think religion forms perhaps the foundation for it. Of course, we've got the other human conditions of ignorance and fear and all these things, lack of education. All it takes is to go on YouTube and see all the ignorance that's flying around in relation to this. But yeah, I think the religious space has a lot of strength to it. That is a strong foundation for it. And you just wish people would educate themselves. There's so many times that people ask me to provide the evidence. Can you support your opinion? Can you support your claim? And for me, it's like, how about you find out yourself, like I did? This isn't really that hard. It's not rocket science either. It's just a matter of, and you know what? Talk to trans people. What a crazy idea. This whole notion of the bathroom issue, people getting so worked up about people using certain bathrooms. I knew a trans person 20 or 30 years ago, and no one raised an eyebrow. It was that's who they were, and they used the bathroom they felt comfortable to use. No one got assaulted. No one was threatened or abused. That's just who they were. And I guess where I live, I'm lucky to be in a fairly progressive area of my country and at a fairly progressive time in history, because we were fine with it. And it seems now that this, I suppose it is becoming more of a mainstream thing that, everyone's got a phone, so everyone can talk about it, right? So I suppose it is getting more and more in people's consciousness into the wrong sorts of consciousness, and that becomes an issue in and of itself. And then you've got the people who make enough noise to get the wheels greased, and they get into power and they get elected, and then they form these laws or fight against the laws. And I think that's sort of a basis from where that's coming from.
Mr. Bear, you had a question from Ricardo Oliveira, who asked, Karali Smith, is she the person behind the Truth Truck?
I don't know. No, I don't. I haven't heard of the Truth Truck. I'm not sure what that is, but she is the head of an organization called Binary. If you look up binary.org, she runs that, and she believes there's two genders and so on. And she has a Bachelor of Theology, or creative writing, as I like to call it. So yeah, she heads up binary.org, which is an Australian organization. So I'm not sure about the Truth Truck thing.
Okay.
No.
Purple, was it better when you moved to Minnesota?
Yeah, I don't know, Michigan as a whole state, I'm not sure of, but we were living in a very small rural area. There was no way I could get out there. Minnesota in general is one of the most progressive states.
Oh, really?
Even here, they managed to pass a law about, trans kids in high school sports. So even in a fairly progressive state, there's still a push for these kind of things.
Blitz the Fox says, go figure. If you treat a trans kid like a normal human being, they don't want to kill themselves. I don't understand why people are so against treating trans people with respect, besides religion.
Yep.
And KCA Randy says, keep out of Missouri. Yeah.
Missouri's actually a southern state that somehow wandered further north.
Yes, it is.
Sorry.
I think the same thing of Idaho and Montana.
Just a quick interjection. Yes, Kirley was behind the Truth Truck. It was a mobile billboard about drag queen story time. So there was a drag queen story time issue that came up in libraries where drag queens were reading to kids. Drag queens had no issue, kids had no issues, but boy, did the conservatives have an issue. So yeah, you're quite right there. Kirley was a part of that. Yeah.
We have the same issue here. I've seen a number of pastors get all hot under the collar over drag queen story hour, and it's like, If you don't like it, don't take your kids. It's not that big a
Well,
deal.
exactly. And look, I'm going to be honest. As a kid, when I saw a drag queen or met a drag queen as a kid, I was interested. It was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. This is it's dress up, it's fun. It's all in attitude, isn't it? I've never had any bad experiences, so I don't really understand it myself.
As long as they have all the necessary bits covered out in public, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I used to want to find a drag queen to ask them where they get their shoes, because
yeah.
I have very odd shaped feet. They're extremely wide. And
Ah.
so I always wanted to know, I fit better into a boy size 5 than I do in a woman's size 7, because women's shoes are too narrow for me. And I've always wondered, where do the drag queens get their shoes?
I
That's
never thought
actually
of
a
that
topic
angle.
that
Yeah.
comes up frequently, to the point that there are websites that specialize in that,
Oh, really?
of women's
Oh.
style shoes in men's sizes.
Oh, there you go.
Mm.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can't wear them anymore, though, because now I've got so many other issues that now I only wear flat shoes.
The back.
The back,
Yeah.
I've also my arches fell, so that my feet are a completely different size now.
Yeah. To me, the thing about drag queen story time is that they can read the hell out of a story, and that's what the whole thing is about, right? It's about story time.
Yeah.
If they can entertain and read a story,
They
tick,
tend to
tick.
get very
No problem.
animated, so they engage the kids well.
Yeah, exactly. And hilarious most of the time.
Ricardo says she was also a pastor.
Yeah, she does have a bachelor in theology, I found out, so I'm not surprised by that. But she loves being her husband's wife.
Katzer has brought up the case of oh gosh, I'm having a senior moment and I can't remember his name. Owen.
Yeah, Telltale.
Thank you, Telltale.
Oh, yeah.
That due to hostility, Telltale had to move from West Virginia because his daughter complained about a teacher teaching religion in class, and they were run out of town.
Yeah, people were actually threatening his 10-year-old daughter because they had dared report the teacher for giving her religious spiel during sex ed class.
Nothing like Christian love. That was just horrendous. That was horrible.
On the lighter side, I love Dog's comment. Jesus and his foot fetish would have loved washing my man-sized feet.
I could spend hours here. Jesus. Don't be so rude.
Even as a kid, that always struck me as strange.
Washing feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of got the cultural thing to it. I kind of got that. But I mean, New Testament pedicures were the thing. So, hey. Can I get rid of some of this dead skin? Thanks, Jesus. They feel so young and fresh.
But yeah.
Do you love me now? I don't know. I'll come back next week. I got some bunions I need removed. Jesus passes. I'm not that all loving. Jeez.
Yeah, the Bible didn't get into the details of the toenail fungus.
No, that's right. He removeth the toe jam.
Probably common, and everybody was walking around barefoot, and all the animals are dropping stuff all over the place.
Yeah, the calluses, the dead skin, the feces. Yeah. In you go, Jesus. Chop, chop.
Turning back to the heavier side, thank you for that lighter moment, though. I really appreciate that, and I think we all needed it. But turning back to the heavier side, one of the things that I wonder is who is the driving force behind all of this? I suspect that a lot of it is the Family Research Council and the American Heritage Foundation, because those are two organizations that are national in scope that can write legislation that, if your state is looking for anti-trans legislation, anti-LGBTQ legislation, anti-abortion legislation, that you can go to those organizations and they'll have attorneys that will write things up for you and have something ready made for you. But that is a fairly well kept secret. And am I being paranoid, or do other people see it that way?
Well, I don't know which groups are actually authoring the bills, but one of the factors is definitely that the Republican Party, is going along and promoting these things because they only stay in power by promoting division.
Good point.
If they can keep the population fighting over stupid things, they don't have to ask questions about what their actual policies are.
Very good point. I had not thought of that. Ricardo Oliveira says it's Christian nationalists, and I think Ricardo is partially correct. I think that is a part of it. And the Christian nationalists, are very much, wanting to. There are a couple of organizations that have overtly said that their intent is to try to take over the United States for God.
One of the ones you mentioned there rings a bell with me. I remember, do they bring, I think it was the Family Association.
Family Research Council?
That one rings a bell with me because do they release polls and things like that, sort of statistics and information? Do they release those sorts of things? Do you know?
Yeah.
They do.
They make a lot of their own polls and they release them to the media.
Yeah, I think I remember looking into one because someone referenced one to me. They referred one to me to have a look at that supported their side of things, which was a wrong side. But when I looked at what they were referencing, they were completely misreading the statistics. So they were misrepresenting the statistics. So I reckon, in my opinion, I think they're presenting their narrative to propel these things as well, which would have an impact. See, people point to it and say, well, look, the statistics show that this is what's happening. But when you actually dug into it properly and read it, it wasn't at all. It wasn't at all. It was quite inaccurate. And I think that's why that rung a bell with me.
Well, also, when you're looking at any poll, you have to consider, who's taking it and if they had an agenda. Because it's very easy to slant the results of a poll. In their case, if they're only polling people coming out of church, they're going to get a rather uniform response.
We asked 100 Muslims in this mosque, and they say Allah is real. Wow, 100 said that. Yeah.
Dewey won.
I think they were really misrepresenting things. So I think that forms a part of it too. And people tend to fall into their own echo chambers and reread the same information, confirming their biases. And that has a roll-on effect at voting time, elections.
This is good. I had not heard of this. Ricardo Oliveira says, in Idaho, the Alliance Defending Freedom has been credited for writing the law. I'm going to have to look into Alliance Defending Freedom. I would be willing to guess that they are a legislative writing group. I can't remember the name offhand. John Oliver did a really good story about a different legislative writing group. It's not specifically left or right. They'll write legislation for any side, but it kind of started, there are model laws that are written that states will adopt. But the funny part is when people are asking for and looking up model laws and and taking them word for word, and even leaving the banner of the company that sold them the law, forgetting to even make it any attempt to make it look like they actually wrote these laws.
Yeah. And it all depends on how you spell freedom. Is it with a D-U-M-B on the end? Because if that's how you spell it, then you shouldn't be drafting legislation.
Yeah, the law in Idaho, big thing that was getting national outcry from was they even had written in there that it was illegal to move out of the state to get a child some transgender treatment somewhere else.
Yes.
And it's like, how can you're basically imprisoning people within the state. How can that possibly go through?
And Missouri is trying to do the same thing with the abortion issue. They are trying to make it illegal for women to leave the state of Missouri for the purpose of getting an abortion.
Yeah, and the Texas law that passed already does that.
Okay. I thought they were still working on that portion, but that's in the law that they already passed, that it's illegal to leave.
It's in the one in Texas. It'll never stand up in court, but
right.
Who's going to have the resources to take it to court, and how many people are going to get screwed over before it gets there?
Except the thing is, with the Texas law, that doesn't have any criminal provisions in it. That has a civil provision, which allows anyone to bring a suit against someone, but that's for having an abortion or aiding abortion within the state. It doesn't have a penalty, any kind of penalty for someone outside of the state. You know what I'm saying?
From my understanding, it also included anyone who would transport someone across the state line to have it done.
Okay. It does include anyone who's transported for the purpose of having an abortion. I suppose as long as a portion of that trip was in the state, to get them out of the state, I could see where, that would fit within the bill. The difference with the Missouri and the Idaho law, though, is those are criminal penalties, and the state is trying to enforce criminal penalties for people committing a crime that isn't even in their state, and that they cannot do.
Yeah.
It would be sort of like if you robbed a bank in Wisconsin, that Minnesota would then charge you with violating a law in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's true. In a criminal case, it has to be done within the state.
Mm-hmm.
And the only ability another state would have over it would be to extradite someone.
But the state that's bringing the charge still has to have a nexus to the crime. The crime has to have been committed in the state. But civil laws are different. You can have a civil claim in your state for an incident that occurred outside of the state. There's a number of situations where that occurs.
Yeah, that's how Texas got around most of the problem, was by not having it be a criminal infraction. They basically could claim that the state wasn't doing this.
Mm-hmm.
We're so lucky that it's legal in all states and territories here.
Katzer says, I'm so ashamed of Texas right now. I remember a time the state wasn't so bad. Well, in that regard, education was still bad. Yeah, I used to live in Texas myself, lived there for 8 years. And when I was there, things were not anywhere near as bad, but Katzer is right. Education was still bad even then. Maybe that's our problem. That was 30 years ago when I lived there. And the education was terrible, and I guess we're paying for it now.
And that's why another part of the Republican package is basically to destroy the public schools.
Yeah.
They're supporting trying to get kids into private, basically religious schools where they can be indoctrinated.
Mm-hmm. And why there's such a push from the conservatives to keep women out of college as well. There's some sort of narrative spin there as well, in the US especially.
I honestly think that a part of the reason that we are seeing so much of this is because of the exodus from the church. The numbers of people that are attending church is down. The
Mm.
number of people who are members of church is down. And I think the church is desperately fighting for its own survival.
Oh yeah, and I think that's been a case going on for the last couple of decades, but has, really been accelerated now because they're finding that, for COVID, people stopped going to church, and even now they're not returning. It's basically people went a year without going to church, and they've kind of decided they don't need to go anymore.
When you say who's behind all this, Granny, with trans issues, can I suggest maybe that there's some kind of fetish going on here? Because I'm sure you don't lay awake at night wondering what's between people's legs. I know I don't. I just don't. I don't lay there thinking, gee, I wonder if next door may be transitioning. And if they are, when and why and how. I just don't. So there's some sort of obsessive thing going on here. I think there's some kind of element to it. I don't know how else to phrase it other than some sort of
Fetish.
Or yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, who can really be so focused on such an issue day after day after day? To me, it's alien. I don't get it. I'm such a live and let live person. That's just how it is. If someone makes the choice, it's their choice. If there's a child who feels this way, well, that's down to the family and their parents and the support they get. It's and like I say, if these people actually talk to trans people, they would get an understanding of how they feel, of where they're coming from and why they're doing this. And they may come to some form of understanding. But it's the ones who say, yes, I acknowledge this is a thing. Transitioning is a thing. I recognize that. But then they just fail to understand it. And that's the problem, because it's not about just acknowledging this. You need to understand it. It's actually, no, let me switch that a little bit. It's like you don't have to understand physics to acknowledge its existence, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I had it wrong.
Okay.
You don't have to understand physics or medicine to acknowledge that it's there. Okay, we agree that yes, there's physics, yes, there's medicine. But it's the people who don't want to acknowledge the fact that people can transition, or may want to transition, or have a need to transition, or want to. The fact they don't want to acknowledge it is like denying that it exists. It's nonsense.
Right.
It's silly.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they
stupidity.
want to do. They want to deny that trans people exist.
Exactly. And like you say, the question is, why? I don't know. Religion, fear, anxiety, misinformation, lack of education. I think all these are nuances that build that. Echo chambers, wrong stats. But I don't know what the foundational thing to it is. Is it just fear, primal fear? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the very base level that people are afraid of anything they don't understand.
Yeah. When you break it right down, I think so.
Okay, we have a topic shift here. Ox says, I have never seen a green-eyed bear. Are you an Irish polar bear?
No, I'm Polish Italian. So I've got the green eyes from my Polish side. My father was Polish.
Okay.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
And the fur comes from the Italian side.
It is the morning of the 17th where you are, isn't it?
It is. It is
So
indeed. It's St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
Ah, the luck of the Irish to you. Those drunken Irish people. Yep. It is St. Patrick's Day. The beer is flowing green today. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
I will stay quiet on that for now because I have a very different view of St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, I'm very interested in hearing your view on St. Patrick's Day. Go ahead, Purple.
Yeah, do spill.
Well, from 25 years in the pagan community, most pagans see it as a cultural genocide.
Mm.
That,
Right.
in real terms, the whole thing of St. Patrick taking all the snakes out of Ireland. Well, to begin with, there isn't a single species of snake that's native to Ireland in the first place. But the
Yes.
snakes were usually metaphorical for the heathens or the pagans, the people who wouldn't follow the Christian ways.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Or symbolic. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a family where I was told that I was 100% Irish. And our family line would seem to support that pretty well because, my maiden name is O'Connell. My mother's maiden name was Delaney, and her mother's maiden name was Coy, which we suspect may have been shortened from McCoy when they emigrated from Ireland. But the funny thing was, my sister went on Ancestry.com and ran our ancestry that showed that we are actually more German and Western European than we are Irish.
I had an uncle who was so Irish. My mom's sister married an Irishman, and just pretty much everything about him was a stereotype.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, stereotypes do come from somewhere. Then it's just that they're not all exactly entirely true. It's just all the mixtures are put together, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. We were always told growing up that St. Patrick's Day was all about getting rid of the House of Orange. That we were trying to throw off the Protestant rule in favor of the Catholics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Junie says, my ancestry DNA used to say I was 3% Irish. Guess I'm not anymore.
Well, I guess if you don't use it for several years, it kind of fades away, huh?
I guess so. I guess so.
Yeah, St. Patrick actually was originally Welsh. He was just known for establishing the first Christian church in Ireland.
Yeah. And became a saint, of course, for very, very plain, obvious reasons, with full evidence supplied. And yes, as all saints are. There's a mountain of evidence for why people became saints.
And Ox says, I'm from the South. We were taught that St. Patrick's Day is a day to get drunk and wear green. And absolutely, Ox, that's what it has devolved to.
In the U.S., that's about all it's about, yeah.
That's why Aussies love it so much.
Beach asks, have you finished with the subject title? Because something bothers me. Please go ahead, Beach. We were just taking a temporary break because this is a rather heavy subject. But we are more than happy to get back to the subject at hand, which is, why is so much legislation that is anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ, anti-women, creeping into our politics. Mm-hmm. And while we wait to see if Beej has a specific question, we'll look at Katzer's comment. I grew up hearing about one of Mom's Irish grandmothers crossing the countryside in a covered wagon, hiding her red hair. I believe it. Yeah. Because back in the pioneer days, being there were a lot of people that said no Irish.
Yeah, there was a lot of discrimination. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really, right up until the Depression, the discrimination against the Irish was as bad as it was against any racial group in the U.S.
Yeah. And there were quite strong Irish criminal groups in New York as well in the 70s and early 80s that were near rivaling the Italian mafia and Cosa Nostra there. But yeah, they come up in their ranks as well.
Okay, Beach Price asks or comments, it's the God bless thing some politicians do to pander to the religious voters, but it alienates others. So why do it? Okay, that is a really good question, because that is something I have had on my mind as well recently. Living in Alabama, where Democrat is a dirty word, we are getting close to primaries. And one of the things that is absolutely laughable is watching commercials where conservatives are accusing Mo Brooks of being too liberal. Now, if you are not familiar with Mo Brooks, he is one of our state representatives in Congress. He spoke on January 6th in body armor shortly before the invasion of the Capitol. And there are politicians here in our state that are running on a platform saying that Mo Brooks is too liberal. So I have considered the possibility, although I don't know if I think I would need a bodyguard to do this. Going to a Republican rally or some kind of Republican event, and then going up to the microphone and asking, you say God bless America, you say that Jesus and everything else. As an atheist, if you are elected, are you going to represent me?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to get up and ask that question and see what they respond.
Yeah. Dan, I thought you made a video in relation to that as well. Did you, to Mo Brooks? I think you made a video where you
I did.
Yeah, you questioned him, and I think he blocked you.
He did.
He can't come back with anything sensical. Why?
And what he blocked me for was really something extremely tame. What happened was Representative Sewell of California has sued Mo Brooks over the January 6th insurrection and was having difficulty serving him with the lawsuit. And he was trying to duck the process servers. And the process servers finally were able to serve his wife. When his wife pulled in, the garage door was open. She got out of the car. If you watch, he has a video of this. The processor server zooms in, jumps out of his car to get to her before she can get inside the house, and hands her the lawsuit. And my comment to Mo Brooks was, he wouldn't have had to do this if you weren't hiding behind your wife's skirts.
Ooh!
And that's what got me blocked by my own congressman.
But valid point.
Facts matter.
That's probably what got you blocked, was you had a valid point. They don't know how to deal with that.
Exactly. I was blocked because he didn't like that I spoke the truth.
That's right.
But anyway,
which happens a lot.
To answer Beach's question, the answer is that most people in this country are still religious. Even among liberals, a lot of the liberals are still religious people. And so they say God bless, because most voters are fine with that. And the few of us that are not outspoken enough.
The percentage of people who would actually be offended by it is small enough that they can ignore it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Which is part of the reason why I like to see atheists unite under one banner, to let people know that, hey, we are a large growing demographic, and we should not be ignored.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to catch up on all the chat. I've been ignoring the chat while we've been conversing on that.
It's okay. It's a bit of a job when you're hosting.
Yeah.
Or by yourself.
Ricardo says it's only saint celebration I always remember. It's also my birthday. Oh, happy birthday, Ricardo.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday,
actually,
Mr. Ricardo.
Hey, should we go ahead and try to sing together? I know it is so hard to do on a stream. It comes out so awful.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Happy birthday,
to
you.
you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
Ricardo. Happy birthday
Happy
to
birthday to you.
you.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. It's impossible to stay together. Anyway, but yeah,
Are you
it
one? Are you two? Are you three? Are you four?
Okay, and we have a super chat from Junie. I need to find that. Here it is. Here it is. It says, "Granny, I'd be honored to be your bodyguard."
Oh, that's impressive.
Mhm.
A slow motion dive to catch the bullet. No.
Beach says happy birthday on the 17th. Well, actually, it is the 17th where Ricardo is. So we can say happy birthday to him already.
Yes, we're in the future.
Mhm.
It's fun here in the future. Cars are flying. It's awesome.
Yeah, you still won't send me tomorrow's lottery numbers.
Can you believe we got 4 out of 6? Ah, so close to $120 million. Damn.
I have actually never played the lottery.
Mrs. Bear is into it. She's a gambler. Well, part-time.
Mm-hmm. Katzer says, I hated when President Bush used religion in his political stance. I remember when he said pagans, atheists are not real citizens and should have the right to vote. I was not aware of that. Having been a very strong believer when Bush was president, I would have agreed with him at the time. And so I don't remember that at all, but that's really interesting.
I don't remember him specifically saying that, but I do remember him, invoking God in several of his speeches.
Yeah, even Biden does that. Fun fact. Atheists got the right to vote in Alabama last year.
Are they allowed to hold office yet?
Yes, we are allowed to hold office.
There are still something like 7 states in the U.S. where an atheist cannot run for public office.
Right, legally, that's true.
Oh.
But yeah, there were a couple people that challenged in Alabama to register to vote. You had to sign swearing some kind of oath, and it ended with "So help me God." And if you crossed off the words "So help me God," your voter registration got chucked in the trash. And so a couple of people who tried to register to vote without agreeing to that oath brought suit, and it didn't get to the Supreme Court because one of the lower courts, the state just simply withdrew the law because they realized they were not going to win. It was just going to be a waste of taxpayer time and money to try to fight that.
Yeah. I recall a Supreme Court matter where there was someone running for. I think they were replacing somebody within the party, and because they were an atheist, they weren't allowed to. And then it went to the Supreme Court. Does that ring a bell with you guys? There was someone. I'll have to look it up. But it was quite a while ago, and because they wouldn't swear under God, they said, "Well, no, we have to go through the election process now."
That does not ring a bell with me at all. The closest thing that I recall to something like that was I saw something on Facebook from some people I actually know quite well that were posting about a high school principal who took an oath, or a school board member, and it was in a different state. And she swore her oath on a Dr. Seuss book. And people were just in arms that she swore this oath on a Dr. Seuss book and not on a Bible. And some of my friends were discussing, well, the oath is invalid if it's not on a Bible, isn't it? And I was saying, no, there's no requirement that you swear an oath on a Bible. And the Dr. Seuss book was a perfectly legitimate document to use for these purposes because it's educational material, and she's taking a job in education. Fun fact, Thomas Jefferson, when he took the oath of office for president, he swore on the Constitution.
Mm.
Yeah, in Minnesota, sometime around 2000, they quietly took the Bible out of the courts so that instead of swearing on the Bible, you're just swearing an oath to the court, which means if you lie, they can still get you on perjury.
Mm. Oh, I've got it now. It was the early 60s. It was in the early 60s, and it was the governor of Maryland appointed Roy Tarcasso as a notary public. So at the time, the Constitution of Maryland required the declaration in the belief or existence of God to hold office. But as he was an atheist, he refused to make the statement. And so it went all the way up to, it was a Tarcasso versus Watkins Supreme Court matter. And the court decided in his favor. They said, no, the Constitution prohibits states and federal government from requiring any kind of religious test for public office.
Yeah, that does sound right. I do remember learning about that. That was really a great decade for the court, the 60s and the 70s. There was a lot of really great decisions that brought a lot of progress to our nation in those 2 decades.
Yeah, we had a much more progressive court, and a lot of important issues got brought in.
Oh, this is cool. Beach says, I swore in court on the criminal code book for Canada.
Cool. That's badass.
And Hellbound Hillbilly says, I once made a pledge of honesty on a thesaurus.
And you've got plenty of synonyms for honesty in there as well.
Yep. Nevermore says, I guess swearing over a pack of Sherman would be too much. Yes, Nevermore. I don't think swearing.
Although actually that sounds very appropriate for swearing in a politician.
Yeah, I thought that'd be pretty appropriate. Gee, I wish our politicians swore over honesty over a thesaurus. Jeez.
Chris Barra says, hey, I'll swear on the Bible as long as it's a Chinese Braille Bible with half the pages missing and it's held upside down and backwards.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Well, apparently that's valid. Nobody really got upset about Trump holding the Bible upside down.
And Cancer says, yes, it's why Marjorie Taylor Greene was such a-hole to Imar, saying her vows weren't legal since she used the Quran.
Ah, yes.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Dog says, I swore on a beer mat.
I swear on beer mats all the time.
Is there such a thing as a wine mat?
No, there is now.
Oh, okay. I don't like beer, but I like wine.
You can declare a patent on that and get it going. That can be your side project.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. And Mage Grey Wolf says, I wonder if I could swear on my Star Trek encyclopedia.
Yeah. I don't think that goes against the regulations. Starfleet regulations.
Nope, I don't think so. Do they ever swear any oaths? I think they do. When they finish in the Star Trek Academy, I recall them taking some kind of oath to Starfleet.
Yeah.
I think so.
I vaguely recall one episode of Next Gen that they had some kind of a legal hearing and that they did swear the people in. You know, they didn't use a Bible. I don't really quite remember it because that was just kind of a flavor note there. It wasn't a main focus point.
I think we've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover for today, but Purple and Mr. Bear, is there anything else along the lines of the topic that I missed that you'd like to discuss?
Well, in the side chat, Junior just brought up the thing of saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
And yeah, that's been a very hot topic in schools. and something that, I'm personally very much against, because I consider that a form of indoctrinating the kids.
Yeah, most schools don't use the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. And what's really interesting is most people don't even realize anymore that the Pledge of Allegiance didn't contain the words under God until the 1950s. Yeah,
Yep.
that was added to try to differentiate us from communist Russia.
Yep, that was added during the McCarthy era, our shining hour.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe I had heard something recently that Florida was trying to push a bill to have every school day start with the Pledge of Allegiance again.
It'll never pass. I mean, even if they pass the legislation, it'll never make it through the courts because the Supreme Court has already decided that one.
But that's the problem we're having, is that they're pushing a lot of bullshit bills that will never stand up in court. But, it's somebody's got to take it to court and fight it.
Right, right. And that's what makes me so angry, is politicians that are wasting so much time and money on what they know is unconstitutional.
But the Republicans know that, this is pandering to their base.
Mm-hmm.
So they know they'll get votes by doing this, and they don't have to care whether or not the laws are valid.
Right, right. All they care about is being reelected. And somehow serving the country fell by the wayside.
Yep. Yeah, it's a similar situation being mirrored here as well. We've got probably the last two prime ministers too focused on media response and media appearances and public perception rather than initiating positive change for the people of the country. So we've got someone at the moment, our prime minister is primarily focused on the polls and public opinion, and you can see that he will sway his persona and perception daily based on what people are saying on his social media and feedback. So it's abhorrent, and that's why he doesn't know what to do with the religious discrimination bill. He just doesn't know what to do with it. He couldn't introduce it in the past. He tried again, and what he does is he slides it in at 4:45 on a Friday to avoid the media picking up on it. But the media is a 24-hour service these days, so he can't avoid it. So it's good to see that at least five in his party crossed the floor to talk against this from their conscience. So that was a really good, a promising sign.
Junie says, because the mask and vaccine mandates, I'm sure that they thought were unconstitutional, so they bring other things up as a checkmate. That's one thing that has been so interesting, watching things get completely turned upside down, is all of the pro-life people being anti-mask and saying, we need to protect life, don't wear a mask.
I know. Again, the brain cells have to shift and realign in my mind, because I just don't know where they're coming from with that. Because they just deny it's real. I know their perspective, but they deny COVID. They deny all these things.
Yeah. Well, it got me when the anti-maskers were using the "My Body, My Choice" slogan.
Exactly.
The irony there.
Yeah.
That's where I was trying to get to, Purple, and I lost the train of thought. I'm glad you've picked it up and finished it for me. What are things like down your way, Bear, with regards to COVID?
Oh, it's rampant. There's probably 30,000 cases. That's recorded cases in my state alone at this time. So it's rampant, and it's almost as if it's gone away. If you looked at mainstream media, it was the Ukraine for a couple of weeks. Now we've had major flooding in the state, 1 in 500 year flooding, whoever you want to believe, that's the claim. So at the moment, it's just been a news cycle where it's like COVID's over, it's all gone. But no, it's very much, we don't have to mask up anymore. We don't have to register in when we go to the supermarket, for instance. We don't have to scan in with a QR code for checking. All these things have dropped away pretty much because our state premier, is a hardcore Catholic and really doesn't believe in the whole thing. So he just dropped all that. My 2 sons are back at school, and my youngest got COVID again about 3 weeks ago. Luckily, he's recovered fine. But it's one of those things where people just think it's over. We're moving on.
Yeah, same here. At the beginning of the month, all the mask mandates expired here. And Australia actually, did quite well handling the COVID through the first year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we did all the right things because we, for the most part, I think we're fairly progressive and understanding that way as a nation. However, mainstream media, once again, focused on the 0.4% who protested in the streets.
Yep. Well, it amplified their voices.
Well, it gets the clicks, it gets the views, it's what's interesting, conflict sells, it's all those things. You got to have something dramatic for the news.
Conflict sells. That's really the key.
Yeah.
If they can get people upset over things, get people screaming, it gets more views.
Yeah. Realistically, 98% of people were off the streets. The cities were empty. We were all isolating. The 2% were the ones the cameras aimed at, and it was just absolute nonsense.
What were you saying about scanning QR codes?
When you say went to a supermarket or any trade, really, any sort of even coffee shops, there was a QR code on the door, and you had what we had was State New South Wales brought in a checking in mechanism where you can check in using your phone, and it checks in with your time and date, and it goes through to them so they can track the spread of COVID.
Okay, so they could track what places you had visited if you test positive.
If you test positive, yeah. So they can say, hey, you were there at this time as well, Purple, heads up. If you get symptoms, right, monitor. Yeah. So it was a way of just keeping things in check.
Well, the government pinpoint where an outbreak started.
Yeah, the government unfortunately spent $2 million on an app that nobody used because it didn't work. And then a year later was brought in a proper app that worked. So they wasted $2 million on an app that didn't work. So that was, again, under Morrison's government. Because he probably didn't believe in COVID. So
Beach asks, Mr. Bear, by MSM, do you mean Murdoch?
Yes, for the most part, yes. Our media here is just over 70% Murdoch. So yes, definitely Murdoch media. Yes. And mainstream, well, MSM, mainstream media, but yeah, it is Murdoch here. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how many people are aware of it, but either Murdoch or Breitbart, between the two of them, own more than 80% of the media in the U.S.
Really? I was not aware of that.
I lost a good friend to, is it Breitbart? I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Breitbart. I lost a good friend to that. I had a friend since high school, and he just fell into all that crap. And even when I'm saying, can you just check the sources and get other sources? He'd say, oh, yeah, but I believe it. He didn't want to. And it was pretty heartbreaking, actually. We just don't get on anymore.
Yeah, I remember a couple of times checking into Breitbart articles, and when I would see them make a claim of something, I would go and check the source, and the source would be another Breitbart article.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a friend that I've quietly pondered, probably would have been sucked down several rabbit holes if I didn't have regular conversations with them. You know, just to kind of get them to consider the source of things.
Well, I am glad they have you as a friend to keep them sane.
Yeah, same.
But anyway, you were saying that Murdoch and Breitbart owned most of the media. Now I know Disney owns a lot of it, AT&T owns a lot of it. And I take it you're saying that those are owned
Well,
by the other
the
sources?
news media, Disney's entertainment media.
Yeah, but Disney owns HBO. Wait, no,
and
AT&T owns
ABC now.
and ABC.
I guess I'd have to go back and check that, but I think they're even their news services like ABC, I think, are still like contracted through one of them.
What about CNN? Are they? Is CNN completely independent, or are they owned by someone else? I don't know.
They are owned by another company, and see, that's the thing. You just sometimes you have to go down 4 or 5 levels, but if you trace it all the way back to the top.
Okay, I'm seeing that CNN is owned by Turner Broadcasting. Yeah, Turner owns a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, Turner was one of the people who really cashed in on the whole cable TV thing.
Yeah.
He made a lot of good guesses in the early stages of cable TV and turned what was a local station into a national corporation.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And then he bought the Braves. And then my mom fell in love with him. My mom loves the Braves.
Actually,
I thought you were talking about Ted Turner then for a second.
Well, she liked Ted Turner because he owned the Braves.
Ah, yes.
Actually, the thing that really made TBS a big thing was the WWF wrestling.
Interesting.
That Turner managed to secure all the rights to the WWF so no other station could show it.
My parents also always watched Turner Classic Movies in the evenings. So they kind of liked that as well. Okay, and now we are completely off topic. That's perfectly okay because we're almost out of time. So I'm going to ask Mr. Barry, you've already told us what you're doing for St. Patrick's Day, mostly because it's already St. Patrick's Day there.
Yes.
Anything else you're doing today to celebrate St. Patrick's Day?
Not so much today, but I can tell you in 2 days' time, I'm going to explore a mystery hill in my state. I'm going to one of those anti-gravity hills, and I'll make a video on that just for something different. So stay tuned for that in the future. I'll check it out.
Okay.
That
Purple.
sounds interesting.
Yeah. Purple, are you doing anything special for St. Patrick's Day to let them know how despicable that holiday is?
I don't have anything planned for it this year, but basically I haven't been doing anything for the last 2 years here. So
actually, the best way to tick off the Irish on St. Patrick's Day to let them know that you are protesting is to wear orange.
Well, among the pagans, it was very popular to just wear a black armband.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you see anybody wearing a black armband tomorrow, that's probably what it's about.
Okay.
But please take care that the Irish are stereotypically drunk and stereotypically violent. So just be careful.
Yeah. When I lived in St. Paul, we lived just like 2 blocks down from an Irish pub. So on St. Patrick's Day, it's like all the streets in our neighborhood, you couldn't find a parking place anywhere. And you had all sorts of drunk people staggering around in the streets.
Everybody into the bunker.
Okay, in a way of wrapping up, I'd like to give everyone a chance to talk a little bit about what they have coming up on their own channels, or if you want to show for someone else, please go ahead. So Purple, let's go ahead, start with you. We know that you have regular streams. Do you have anything particular as far as topics coming up in the near future?
Mostly I just, name them all after random holidays on the internet. I've got tomorrow night. Actually, I don't even remember what my topic is for the one, but tomorrow night at 10, U.S. Central.
Okay.
Next Wednesday at noon, it will be Wednesday is near Miss Day to commemorate our close encounter with a half-mile wide asteroid.
Mm.
Is that the giraffe one? It was half a giraffe size. Is that the one? Someone said the meteorite was about size of half a giraffe or something. Is that the one?
Well,
or maybe I'm talking about something else.
I think it was I think it was like 1898 or something that it was a meteor that was half a mile across. So it was definitely something comparable to the size of what they think wiped out the dinosaurs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Have you seen Don't Look Up?
Not yet.
It is hilarious. As
Okay.
when I was watching it at the beginning, I thought it was a serious show. And I thought
Right.
this is getting a bit silly. This is getting a bit
Right.
far-fetched. And then about halfway through, I finally figured, oh, this is satire.
Right. Right.
And then all of a sudden it was hilarious.
It made sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of presented as a serious drama, but
It is.
it's not
It
that at all,
is.
is it? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
With serious actors.
Mhm. Mhm. And of course, I thought of that with Purple talking about the meteor. Okay, and Mr. Bear, what do you have coming up on your channel?
Yeah, so I've got I'm doing the aforementioned Mystery Hill video. I'll go check that out. Keep an eye out because I spotted a street preacher in my town yesterday.
Ooh.
So there may be
Ooh.
a live stream on that. Just stay tuned. I'll try and hunt them down again this week.
Okay.
I haven't seen one in my parts for quite some time, so it's very interesting. And just look out for some more live streams in future. I'm going down the coast on a bit of a trip, and I am going to be amongst some how can we say, people with alternative views. So keep a lookout for that. I may live stream that as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
studying the Loch Ness Monster is what primed me for questioning religion more.
What was that? The Loch Ness Monster?
As a teenager, I was rather obsessed with cryptids.
Oh, yeah.
And I had done a term paper on lake monsters for school.
Ah, cool.
And realized at some point I had 22 books on the Loch Ness Monster, which seemed like a lot until you realize that all these 22 books were just retelling the same 3 sightings. That there had really only been 3 incidents, and they made it look like this huge mound.
That sounds like a lot of things.
Yeah, so that did have me look at the Bible differently when I was reading it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, what I have coming up on my channel is this week I'm doing a response to an article from Dr. McLatchy on the resurrection. And the way that this one in particular came about is I saw on Twitter where he was complaining that YouTube atheists go after low-hanging fruit. And I was a little surprised at who he tagged as low-hanging fruit, which was Gary Habermas. Because I thought a lot of Christians considered him to be a serious apologist, but evidently McLatchy says no, he's low-hanging fruit. And so someone responded to him and asked, well, what do you consider robust apologetics? And McLatchy responded with an article that he wrote himself. So of course I had to pick up the glove. It's not a video response. It's a response to a written article. So you get just my voice the whole time. I probably should have asked someone to read his parts for him, but I tend to put things together kind of on the fly and put when I'm ready to record, I just record. That's coming up this week. And I have a special stream coming up on Saturday. Trolley Dave and Stand to Reason will be on, and we will be talking about the reasoning process and how to think and how to reason. And that is going to be at 7 a.m. Central Time on Saturday morning. So for those of you in the UK who normally have to stay up until ridiculous times, it's going to be 1 o'clock in the afternoon for you. But for Mr. Bear, sorry, for those of you down under, it's going to be a terrible time. It's probably going to be somewhere around 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I've got that coming up as well. And then next Wednesday we'll have my usual stream. I don't have a guest lined up yet, but I will get something together before then. And with that, I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. You have contributed a great deal to this show. Their questions have been wonderful. The comments have been wonderful. And I think this has been a really enjoyable show. We were able to cover both some very serious topics and have a bit of fun as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank
It's
you
been
for
great.
coming, Mr. Bear, and thank you for coming, Purple.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Thank you.
Always good to be
Take
here.
care, everybody.
Live your life.